All right, guys, it's official. We have a new NXT North American champion. In fact, championships are flipping around like hotcakes in WWE. Blood and Guts happens tonight, and a whole lot more. You are locked into the Wednesday edition of WWT Live.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Women's Wrestling Talk, the #1 women's wrestling show on the planet.
It is officially WWT Live on a Wednesday. My name is Gerard Bonner. They call me the professor around these parts. And you are locked into Women's Wrestling Talk, the #1 women's wrestling show on the planet. And good God, there's a lot of news to talk about, a lot of things going on. A lot can happen in 48 hours, such is the case in the world of pro wrestling. And thankfully, I'm not alone. I've got some good brothers hanging out with us today. First up, it is the man, the myth, the legend. He's got all the answers. He is the way. It's Said. Said says, what's up, brother?
Hold on. Yeah.
Listen, dude, put the ear to it. Can you hear that?
You hear that? Me not. That's a changed battery. You know what I'm saying? that's the battery. Like I said, was going to change the battery. It didn't take long. So everybody in the chat, you guys are welcome. You don't have to hear random beeps and things like that. I don't want that to be my moniker another day on this earth. So we're good. So it's a happy Wednesday. It's a great Wednesday.
It is a great Wednesday indeed. Progress has come, man. We are proud of you. That is hilarious. Oh my gosh. If you guys have no idea what Seth's talking about, you probably just have to go back and watch a previous episode of the show, and you'll get a certain accompaniment that was coming from his neck of the woods. But that is all resolved. But you good, man?
I'm great.
Very
and
good.
then it's so much that happened. Like you said, 48 hours. There's been a lot of good, actually. A lot of good.
Yeah, a lot of good to talk about, and we'll get into it. And joining the crew, it is DJ Chuck. What's up, good brother? Uh-oh, I think you're muted.
You would think after being behind Zoom for 3 years, we had the on-mute situation together, but nope. Even now, it still happens. But I was saying I'm good on this Wednesday. Happy you with your brothers, and I'm even more happy that the long-term booking of Cedric versus the Fire has finally concluded. The feud has concluded. There's no more long-term booking over it. He has acknowledged the 9-volt battery.
The other funny thing, remember, at one point said you were saying that you were going to end up fighting, I think, Spectrum at WrestleMania 40 because of the internet situation.
Oh, that's a handicap match.
It was Frontier, and it was so bad that I had to talk to them about that because I kept cutting out midstream. And then, lo and behold, I got people in the chat telling me, like, hey, what's that beeping noise? Like, for a couple weeks, I'm like, I don't know. Like, just to find out it was me.
All right. I think it was me.
Oh, no. What happened?
What happened?
I think it was me. I think it was on my side. Are we back?
Did we ever drop? Are we good?
Okay, we're good.
Oh, okay. I don't know if we ever dropped her. Okay. Live radio, ladies and gentlemen. Live TV, live everything. This is how we do it right now. You gotta love it.
I love it. Well, how about this? How about we jump into our first story of the day? Because this is a big one on the heels of a really big NXT last night.
Well, we got a very surprising ending in the whole situation of things. The past couple weeks has kind of been the Judgment Day takeover on what we now know as the third brand on Tuesday nights, which is NXT. We had a North American Championship match. You saw Dom had a run-in with Wesley last week, told him to throw out the open challenge, gave him a week to kind of get everything right. And I'm going to let people in the chat decide if they felt like it was a good match or not, but we had some shenanigans, and now we have a new North American champion. The reason why this is interesting to me, it's because it was a genuine surprise. I don't think anybody expected Wesley to lose that title because he has things going on with Mustafa Ali, as well as Big Strong Boy. He has some things going on there. There's feuds that are there. But putting Dom in this, which, if you recall, there's a lot of people that were upset that Dom didn't traditionally go through NXT.
Right.
People wanted Dom to take that long route in NXT because they kind of felt like he was very green in the main roster for years. Now we have him as a North American champion. I think this works for all parties just because this title is going to get featured on the main roster a lot more. Makes Judgment Day look even stronger, having more gold in their ranks, along with a Money in the Bank briefcase holder. It's a win. It's a win. But the thing that lets you know that Dom is the most hated person as a company is the reaction of the audience. That was the most beautiful part. That whole audience was stunned, pissed off, and went home upset.
Yes.
Yep. You know what, says you remember when we talked last week about NXT, we're talking about, is there too much main roster crossover? And one of the things we emphasize is, for this to work well, there has to be surprises. There has to be consequences to the booking. Last night was a great example to consequences of booking. There were stakes at risk and it paid off. And you know what? We talked about this off air. We went on about the Judgment Day takeover here. And I said it with another friend of mine, a coworker of mine today, who's a wrestling head. Who would have known that Judgment Day would be so over at this? Like when Edge first started the state, we're like, all right, I can rock with this. This makes sense. And then when he kicked him out of the group, you're like, where the hell is this even going? Is it going to be over in 6 weeks? Man, it's one of the most interesting stories, I think, in WWE in the last year. The fact that they have made this staple so powerful, dominant, popular. Now you have, Rhea, of course, and Rhea, man, she gave Homeboy a moonshine last night with that title shot.
Yes, she did.
Right over the eyes. So Dom's got titles, Rhea's got titles, Priest has got the briefcase. This makes me think, are they gonna pull the trigger on Finn at SummerSlam and just drape them out in gold at this point? After seeing that makes me think, do they do that? You have Priest, maybe, you play with Priest, maybe going, is he gonna cash in on the homie or not? Or depending on what happens with Jay, does he go after Roman? Do you play that card? There's a lot to go with the storyline from here. So I'm very interested to see where they go from here. But you know what? Dom has, as you said, he didn't go the traditional NXT route. I guess is his way of doing it. He has really elevated his character. It's not the son of Rey Mysterio anymore. He's taken that legitimate, I hate this kid. He's gotten everything that's given to him heat to a legitimate villain, cowboy boots and all. So you got to give Dom that credit. I think, honestly, since WrestleMania, Dom has operated on another level. If you were at SoFi Stadium that night, like I was, and you saw his entrance with the paddy wagon and the whole thing, you're like, you know what, Dom Mysterio has arrived. So you know what, I got to give Dirty Dom his props, man. But I think it was a great match. I think it's one of Dom's best solo matches since he's came to the roster, to be honest with you. So great booking, great decision making, and it's going to be very interesting to see where they go with it from there.
Well, let's find out from the chat what people are saying, because we've got a lot of folks there. Hey, Stephanie, good to see you. Ron, always a pleasure, my friend. Boza is here, and Boza's not happy. So let's just go straight to what Boza has to say. Boza is feeling like he's in WCW talking about rap is crap. If you watch the match, Dominik was a sloppy mess. The Tiger 97 driver was crap. This is how they ended the longest title reign in history, please. Well, let me read more comments. I'm coming back to that, though. Ron says this brings more eyes onto NXT. And to that end, funny that you mentioned that. If we look at the ratings for last night, NXT drew 746,000 viewers last night, which is up from 671,000 viewers the week before. That's pretty massive when you think about that, going week to week. And the only difference was Dominik Mysterio. So there's a lot of people clearly engaged in what's happening with NXT. Bozis says, I have two thoughts. Nick Khan is saying NXT can't draw, so main roster stars to the rescue. It would be better for Mustafa Ali to beat Dom than Wesley at the Bash. I'm coming back to both of those statements in a second. Let's see. Ron says, I would love Judgment Day with all the gold in the briefcase. You know, it's a possibility right now. And perhaps a not so popular opinion, but here's a crazy thought to think that right now, Judgment Day is more diverse in its championships than perhaps the Bloodline ever was, which is interesting, considering the Bloodline had the world champion and the tag champs. Now, what's also interesting is in that brief moment where the Bloodline had the North American championship with Solo Sikoa, and they stripped Solo of that title, perhaps it was because he was from NXT going to SmackDown. Obviously, I think things are completely different in this scenario. I don't see them stripping Dominik Mysterio, but I am intrigued. Let's go back to some of Bose's comments and get what you guys think about this. He obviously is not happy with the way this ended. He felt like Dom was a sloppy mess, and he didn't like how that ended. So let's address that first. Do you think that Dom was actually good in ring? And the second part of that question is, what was more important with this match last night? Is it how it technically came off, or is it the story that was told? Chuck, let's start with you.
Dom is
I'm sorry, go ahead.
not technically sound on purpose at this point. I feel like it's done on purpose just because people are going to hate it. Like the sloppiness, the looking kind of gassed type of move set. Like I think it's on purpose, and I think it plays into the character of him being like, yeah, I was in prison, I did a hard time, yada yada yada. And like, because I mean, at WrestleMania with his dad, he put on a very good match.
Absolutely,
very good match. I think we've seen good work out of Dom, but I think a lot of the stuff is done at in capable fashion to kind of reinforce the character and reinforce the hate that's being pushed out by the audience.
Yeah. What are your thoughts, Chuck?
First of all, I got to send a shout out to Gerard for the Kurt Hennig WCW Rapist Crap No Limit Soldiers feud reference there. That popped up on my Instagram last week, and I'm a hip hop. Look, I'm from the culture. I love the culture. I'm an MC myself, but that shit was jokes. That shit is still jokes to me. Seth has a point. Maybe the sloppy in-ring work is part of it. I can't choke it up to nerves. The man wrestled in front of 70,000 people with his daddy.
Right. And
that's more pressure because your dad's a legend. And you don't disappoint your father. So it could be that. I mean, like, honestly, we always have this discussion on this show. Is it the wrestling or is it the storyline? When it's like the perfect beat and the perfect lyrics, when they're married together, it's what makes pro wrestling one of the best things in the world.
Right.
But at the end of the day, if the ring work is solid and the story's even better, it can carry it over. The story had to be stronger in this case. And I love good in-ring performing, but if there's I keep saying it on here, there's no consequences, there's no reason for these guys to be mad at each other, what are we fighting for? Like, what is the point? So the story is what was the most powerful thing here. And the story here is it is Judgment Day's continued run throughout the company. And it's like, where is it going to stop? And to add to your point about diverse titles, even though Judgment Day never had a woman from the women's roster in their stable, which I always wanted to see that. May I add that in there? I would have loved to see. I would have loved to see maybe Naomi. Maybe if things didn't go south, I think that'd have been the play. Yeah. But you're right, because you have a women's champion, you have the Money in the Bank briefcase. No one held that. In the, and then you have one of the kind of secondary titles as well. That's why I'm like, if they decide to pull the trigger on Finn, I think it's going to be one of the most unique staples we've ever seen. I don't think we've ever seen anything like that before in WWE. Not that I can think of. Someone please correct me if I'm wrong.
The news came out earlier, I think today or yesterday, that the Judgment Day is kind of seen as a successor to this bloodline storyline when it ends. Like, that's how high they are on the Judgment Day. They feel like they can carry the company with that faction. So it'll be very telling is when we get to Detroit, like you said, if they pull the trigger on Finn, because this is like that second run NXT fan, which is like, I'm gonna get mine regardless
Right.
type of attitude.
Mhm.
Now, your boy got the briefcase. We're probably gonna get Roman versus Jay. Now, what if they pull at our heartstrings? Jay dethrones Roman and gets cashed in on that night. How much
That
heat would that be
possibility.
on the faction?
That is a strong
Yo.
possibility.
Wow.
How
That's
much
a
heat would you
possibility.
have on that faction? And you know what's dope about the Judgment Day is that it can always expand. Like Dom's in that little brother role. I like the moment that Dom and Tony D'Angelo had last night. It was like, oh,
Yes.
buddy from the yard said what's up. But also, we see Rhea kind of playing that mentor role. She was like, hey, Lyra, I've been telling people you're a badass. What's up?
Yep.
Right.
She's like, I'm gonna prove it to you that I am. That could be another woman in the faction. It can just grow. And I think that's what's beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead.
The one thing about Jay winning the title, this is my biggest concern. Say they pull the trigger and we get the final dethroning of the tribal chief. Where does Jay's storyline go from there is the question. Is the feud with Priest the move? Will that move the needle? Is that, viable, after you just ended one of the biggest storylines in your company's history? Or do you keep it on Roman and then predict the big, title drop to Cody Rhodes at Mania 40? That's my only thing. Is there a strong enough story? Because once Roman drops the titles, he's good. He's gone for a minute. He's going to take a long vacation.
Sure.
I think he's gone for at least a year. At the very least, he's gone for a year. So, but said your idea of Jay wins and Priest cashes in. Whoo! I got goosebumps thinking of that idea. That
you talk about heat, and
man, that's more heat than when I walk outside this studio.
Right.
Because there's a couple of ways you can go with that. Like, I think it's logical that people wanted either Sammy or Jay to be the one to end Roman's title run, but there's like a whole depth of challengers on SmackDown. Like, still, like whatever is going to happen with Bray Wyatt, Bobby Lashley's finally making an appearance, and he might have a new stable. There's so many people that Roman could still run through on the way to losing to a Jay or a Cody maybe next year. And I think there's still a magical. Did he break Hogan's?
Not yet.
Yeah.
We got a while to
go. Right? I thought he did.
No. He broke Pedro Morales.
Okay.
Right.
For Hogan,
so I think that's the other magic number that they want.
Hogan is
next year.
Hogan is third, right? Third all time.
Correct.
Is it? Yeah. Oh, yeah. You're right. You're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah, I think that's the magic number they want. So I can't see them pulling it off them until they do that. But man, if they want to pay off that Jay storyline and kind of elevate Priest right away, that would be a money way to do it.
Ooh,
it would be. It'd be a shocker. It would be a real shocker. So that'll be.
Do you guys think Dom is going to have a legit title run with his North American title, or is this going to be like this hot potato thing?
Great question.
That's a very good question. I'd love to put that to you guys in the chat. How long of a run do you think Dom will have? And I mean, kind of the precedent that we look at is we can go back to when Dolph won the NXT championship.
Right.
And that went for about a month, maybe 6 weeks tops. Got him through WrestleMania weekend. And then, of course, that Raw, the Monday after, or the Raw after Mania is where he lost. And then you can also look at the New Day when they won the NXT tag titles last year. That lasted for about a month or so. Part of me wonders if the difference here is there are still things that Dom could do in NXT.
Correct.
Because he hasn't spent time there. So Dom going to NXT wouldn't be a bad move. And considering, and to me, I think this win solidifies it. Plus, there were some other really insane matches that happened on NXT last night. It says to me that NXT is now at a point where they can start to be viewed as a third brand. I mean, I'm starting to see that in-ring and story action starting to really resemble the black and gold days that we know and love. So with that being the case, if we're looking at this as a third brand, then it is conceivable to think that Dominik could spend some time there. How long, I don't know. But yeah, that's what I'm interested in seeing. Got a few things going on here. Boza says, I think this is done mainly to help ticket sales. Also, I think they want to help keep him busy because he doesn't fit into SummerSlam plans. Finn has a match. Rhea will have a match. Ticket sales
I think the PLE for Great American Bash.
Oh, for NXT, not for SummerSlam, but
I'm thinking for Great American Bash. Probably help ticket sales for that.
Where is it? Is that in Detroit?
It's in Texas.
Okay.
It's in Texas. And I don't know.
I think you have to associate that if Dom's on the card, that Rhea is going to be there too, so people get to see Rhea at the very least.
Right.
So I think that kind of can be a ticket sales argument.
Yeah, we have now. What we don't know is, I mean, it's safe to say that there will likely be a match for the North American title at the Great American Bash. Will it be a triple threat involving Ali and Wesley? Will it just be a rematch one-on-one with him and Wesley? I don't know. That'll obviously, they'll probably determine that next week, which I'm imagining. But I think that should be interesting. Boza also says this match in Reign will prove that Dominik should have went to NXT first, but didn't.
I got to disagree with that one. I'm sorry, Boza. I know usually and I agree on stuff, but I mean, looking at the path he's taken, sometimes you got to go back to go forward. Sometimes you got to cover your bases in your journey.
Mm-hmm.
It just happens in professions. You may have gotten, to the bigger stages. Go, you know what? I need to go back and let's compare what did Finn Balor say when he came back to NXT. It's like being back on Broadway. He had to go back and kind of regroup and find himself. Not to compare the skill level of Balor and Dominik, of course, to much more, in terms of time in the ring. But this is him kind of going back and covering those bases because he didn't have that. So he's had time on the main roster. Now he's going to get the small crowds and really put the time in there. And then when he fully put him back on the main roster, he's a better wrestler. I think that's what the plan is. But to your point, Gerard, I guess we got to ask this question because the debate of is NXT a third brand or not? Because we kept hearing, especially when AEW was getting them in the ratings, and now they're like, no, it wasn't a third brand. It was a developmental. Do you think they finally found a good balance between NXT being that developmental and establishing his own identity versus when, Vince had the complete reign, it was just Triple H and he saw it as his own entity? Are we finally finding that balance where it is a developmental, but it has its own identity?
It's interesting because Nick Khan, who was the one back in 2021 calling it developmental, changing it to 2.0, has now changed his tune, saying that it can be a viable third brand. I think it's interesting. I do think that they are striking a good balance between literal developmental in terms of people who are just spending their first year or two in the business and people who are a bit more on the veteran side of things. And I think one of the things that's helping them too is some of the people that they have grabbed are naturally amazing athletes, and they have found a way to transition in such a way where you don't see them as developmental because they are so good in the ring. Right. So I think that's giving them the opportunity to be viewed as a third brand. And I think obviously fusing some of the stars in from, Raw or SmackDown is helping the case as well. To Dominik's point, the one thing I think a lot of us forget is that Dominik started wrestling during the pandemic.
Yeah.
So he could not have gotten that NXT feel in terms of working in front of smaller crowds because he worked in front of no crowds, right? So now, and then he was kind of thrust in there on the back of his dad once we got crowds back and things like that. So would he have started in NXT? We probably will never know. Had the pandemic not happened, you could almost assume that he would have. I mean, after all, think about it. Gable Steveson, who was drafted to Raw, is now in NXT.
Right.
So you got to think that, they probably would have put him in NXT, but at that time, he would not have gotten the full NXT experience since they had no fans.
It was like that hockey field to it. You had the glass boards around, and I think it was mostly people from the back at that point. Right.
So super interesting. All right, we're going to move on because an interesting thing is happening out in Hollywood, and that is the strike. And a big name from the sport is supporting those on the strike. Seth, you want to tell us about that?
Seth Rollins, always the company guy. He's always going to say the right thing for his brand and kind of wear his shield, no pun intended,
I
right
see
on
what
his
you did
chest.
there.
He got caught up with the boys from TMZ to ask him about his thoughts on the writer strike. And while he stands with the actors who are trying to get their support, get their full earnings, what they're worth, he has a silver lining that he believes is there. And he says, I know it's a difficult time for the actors and the writers. I believe they're doing the right thing for asking for what they're asking for what they deserve. I stand by them, but it is a fortunate part of not being part of a union that we're still able to perform. And for our audiences and people who may not be familiar, now they get the opportunity to tune in to see what we're all about. So Seth's take on this whole thing is, yeah, that sucks. And I'm happy that they're trying to go get their money. But if you don't got nothing to watch, your shows on Netflix ain't going on right now, come watch some wrestling. We hear all the time.
Knight. He pulled a Suge Knight.
Mm.
Anybody who doesn't want to, you know, y'all notice, he pulled a Suge Knight. He said,
and people have been taking it all types of ways. Like people have been kind of putting words in his mouth. He does support and stand by the actors and the writers who are on strike. But he's just saying like, hey, maybe we'll pull in some more fans because we're on TV still, which isn't a bad thing to say, in my opinion. But I don't think you're a casual person who's like out watching like, I don't know, who's out watching like Love Island or something like that. It's gonna be like, oh yeah, let me watch Monday Night Raw. I don't think they're gonna do that.
I love Seth, but this was incredibly tone deaf. I'm sorry. Like I got to keep it a buck, man. I love Rollins, and if he's trying to get a career in Hollywood, this is the wrong thing to say. Like, look, where I'm at studio wise is right around the corner from Warner and Disney. And every day I'm driving past strikers every single day. I know you probably guys saw the story of Universal's cutting down the branches. So the strikers have no kind of shade or anything. You know, it's heavy out here. And a lot of people's livelihoods are on the line here. So I get he's trying to pull people to the I don't know if that was the right way to put it. You know, he should have stayed neutral in that. Like, hey, it sucks. You know, he could have just said, hey, you know what? It's not right. I just spent time on the movie role. I see how hard these people work, and I hope for a conclusion as soon as possible. That's really all I could say. But then again, the argument about WWE and wrestlers and unions, I don't know if he was trying not to open up that can of worms.
That was the interesting part of that quote. He pretty much openly said, like, the silver lining is of not being in a union when there's been wrestlers in the past who said that they should be in a union. So I don't know. I would love to know his feelings about that. Was that him just kind of putting that out there to maybe try to get advocates for that, or does he feel like it's not necessary? Because I feel like unionizing wrestling is something that's absolutely needed.
Absolutely long overdue. It's unexcusable that wrestlers, anybody, which a lot of people are these days because of the times are independent contractors, you know, or have a side hustle along with their regular job and know of the pains of being an independent contractor, handling your own business, handling your own travel, and handling your own taxes. And for a company like WWE to still have that, it's just ludicrous. It's always been ludicrous to me. So to Rollins's point, again, you said earlier as the story started, as a company man, is he for it, or is he kind of just like trying to keep it cool and not trying to open up that can of worms? I really think he's trying to be cool, and not open up that can of worms. Because remember, it's not just Seth that's in the Hollywood world now; so is Becky. So they're both seeing this side of it now. But
it's true. Yeah.
Very interesting for sure. Yeah. Interesting.
I mean, it's still TMZ. You got to like kind of have that with a grain of salt. Like these guys, camp out. That I used to do the job, so they camp out. They know where to find you, and then it's like you get caught off guard with all these questions. Like,
yeah. Well,
TMZ should have a new show called "Catch You Slipping" because that's what they do all the time. They catch people slipping.
They do. Well, let me tell you who got caught slipping. The WWE Women's Tag Team Champions. They were caught slipping as we've got new champions yet again. Chelsea Green, Sonya Deville are the new women's tag champions, defeating Raquel Rodriguez and Liv Morgan. just, oh my goodness, what, 2 weeks after those ladies won the titles from Shayna Baszler and Ronda Rousey. So let's pose the question, and it has been an ongoing question about these women's championships really for the last year, maybe even 2 years. What's going on with the WWE Women's Tag Team Championships, and does this move make sense? I'm posing it to you guys in the chat as well as to my good brothers here. Chuck, let's start with you.
You know, they've really been playing hot potato with these titles. And also, you have to also keep in mind that Raquel has kind of had a bad luck in terms of like partners being healthy. That team, health-wise, has had its backwards and forwards to where you couldn't have the longest reign.
Mhm.
Even the unification of it, and I think I said this before, it's hard. I'm never usually for the unification of main roster titles and NXT titles. I feel like they should be their own separate thing. So I'm still trying to see what they're going to make out with that. As far as it going to Chelsea Green and Sonya Deville, they have really put in the work in the last, like as a team, they've built as a team, their characteristics, the whole Karen, characters. I think this reign is going to it's going to stick just for a little bit. I don't know how long, but I do think the reign is deserving. I think it's absolutely deserving. But as far as how they're going to book it and how long's going to book it, I have zero idea. Please somebody get me in the chat. How many actual women's tag teams are there in the company between all three brands? How many? Like, I know there are 7, and that's even the, hey, you're not doing anything. You're not doing anything. Let's put them together teams.
I'm thinking legit tag teams. I
7.
think I can list 7.
And then if we put together this person was sitting catering, let's give them work, put them in a tag teams. That's about what, maybe 10 to 12, maybe, if that. I mean, they have enough to make it work. I just don't know what the direction is. And I think that's what we're all trying to figure out. What is the direction? Right. So if you're asking me what is the direction, I don't know. Do I think that was a well-deserved title reign? Absolutely. I just wish, and maybe it's because Ronda's out the door pretty soon here, as the rumors have stated. I just wish there'd have been more burn on her and Shayna having the titles because they wanted to have that reign for so long. And then because I feel like that turn was so abrupt. We kind of knew it was going to happen eventually, but it was kind of melodramatic, and I guess because she's out the door in a minute. But I just wish it had more slow burn to it. But the win was deserved, without question. I just don't know where they're going to go from here.
Yeah. Said, what are you thinking, man?
Well, first thing is the NXT tag team titles for the women's division was a mistake from the jump, because these original titles were traveling to all three brands. We saw it in the pandemic era with Sasha and Bayley. These are titles that traveled and gave everybody some face time. Now, I'm happy for Sonya finally getting her first title in the company. I think it's a good thing. I think these two have kind of put in the work, their characters work. And even if there's no matches that happen every week or once a month or whatever, I think they'll provide better face time for the titles, promo-wise, and backstage segments with management, things like that. They'll bring more, I don't want to say validity, but they'll bring more appearances with these titles, just off character-driven alone. So as far as the hot potato titles, this makes sense more so than Ronda and Shayna dethroning, or Isla and Alba when they unified. This makes more sense because I think the tea leaves are that Raquel and Rhea is happening at SummerSlam. Now you remove the tag team titles from the picture, so they don't get caught up in that. You kept Liv strong in the process by having her attack Rhea later that night. Both of those two are better deemed as singles acts, and I know they want to elevate Raquel to that same status of like a Bianca, Io, and a Rhea at some point. So I think this is a help that happen while keeping Liv strong, who Liv has been ever since the mess with that Rusev Lana stuff. She's completely changed her character and become a star, a legitimate star. I think she deserves to be in more singles matches. So I like it. I think it makes sense. I think it's great for Sonya. I think it's great for Chelsea, who just came back. And I think we'll see these titles actually travel to NXT against some of those teams and get more face time.
I think
Mhm.
everybody is officially recovered from the whole love triangle that whole angle was. Thank you, God, everybody recovered because
I had literally forgotten about that. That's hilarious. That is hilarious.
Outstanding.
We've got some cool comments. Nikki, how are you? Nikki says, I don't see the issue with the change. Boza says, I had no problem
agree.
with this. It made sense. They are trying to get Rhea versus Raquel. I can see this being the team that holds it for a while. Ron says, Trinity and Mercedes were right. That's a good one. This is falling into the category of two things can be true at the same time. So happy to for Sonya to finally be a champion after 8 years, considering the last 4 years of her life were hell, and that's the truth.
Absolutely.
Hey there, Shadow Ranger. Plus Adam Pierce whining and throwing a fit every time he sees them. The team he dubbed Misery Loves Company is now the tag champions, and there's definitely an entertainment value to that, which is hard to deny. Let's see what else we have here. Oh boy, all the tag teams. Nikki, running through these tag teams.
I knew Nikki would have it.
I knew Nikki would have it too.
Yep.
And it's 7. I feel like we should get a prize for the game show. Said 7.
Wow.
That was great. And then Chelsea and Sonya would be 8.
Thank you, Nikki.
You add Isla and Alba, and that's 9. All right. So we've got 9, I think, which is pretty cool. And let's see. Interesting fact. Chelsea becomes the 3rd woman to be a tag champion in both WWE and Impact. And now we're being corrected. That's actually the 4th, because you've got Thea, Chelsea, and the Iconics. And I definitely remember the Iconics being in there as well. So definitely a conversation piece. Congratulations for sure to this team of Chelsea and Sonya, who I do think are going to be very entertaining tag team champions for sure. So moving from Raw and NXT to what's scheduled to go down tonight. Tonight it goes down, and I have to tell you, I haven't anticipated a Blood and Guts as much as I'm anticipating this one tonight. Blood and Guts, AEW's version or presentation of what we know as War Games, takes place tonight. Blackpool Combat Club, which also will include Konosuke Takeshita, and it will include Pac, will take on the Golden Elite, which will include, of course, Kota Ibushi. It goes down tonight. Should be pretty incredible. Also, a tag team match that's scheduled to happen for the finals of, is it the final? No, it's the semifinals, I'm sorry, of this blind eliminator tag tournament that's happening. And then there will be the FTW world title match between Hook and Jack Perry. What are your thoughts, guys, on this upcoming Blood and Guts match, the debut of Kota Ibushi in AEW, and the like? And Nikki, we are getting to the women's situation with Blood and Guts in just a second, so that's on the way.
To quote Booker T, all shucky ducky quack quack. This is what I'm going to be racing home to go watch as soon as we're done with this broadcast. As far look, to see the Golden Lovers here in the States, I got to see them do their thing when they came out here with New Japan, but even before AEW was a thing. This match is going to be a banger. It's going to be ugly. It's going to get dramatic. Who's going to win? Honestly, cannot call it. It can go either way. I think they've done a great job in terms of, I think it's the best they've done in hyping a Blood and Guts match in terms of storyline and consequences, because they have so many stories that have interweaved to come to this point. So they've done a great job in building it. It's going to be a banger. I have no idea which way it's going to go. All I know is, like, are they going to have Don Callis take one more bump? Because Don Callis been getting his ass whooped in these streets. both kayfabe and non-kayfabe, man. But but I believe Don Callis will get in the mix somehow. But I don't know who's going to win. I can't call it. But it's good to see Ibushi finally in AEW, man. This is going to be a great match.
Sure will. Said, your thoughts on the upcoming Blood and Guts match tonight?
You know what? I see these matches and they are very exciting. But when I see like these the setups. I'm like, in my mind, am I supposed to be really rooting against Moxley and BCC? Like, there's no way. There's no way. Like, I feel like a lot of the stuff is propped up to like put the Elite over, but it's like I can't root against BCC. That's a really cool group. So it'll be interesting to see how they plan everything out. I like the inclusion of Pac, who I think was out to injury for a while. I think that's going to be really cool. Debbie Kota Ibushi, who, if you dig really deep, he has some WWE tape in there, which seems very, very odd to see. So I think overall, very good card. I'm loving the blind eliminator tournament stuff. The stuff with Adam Cole and MJF has been gold.
Absolutely.
I hope they keep that going longer than scheduled. It's been very entertaining, to say the least. And then with Hook and Jack Perry, it's kind of good to see Jack Perry kind of flex a different persona. So I'm interested to see how they keep doing that, because the Jungle Boy thing wasn't working for me. So if he just takes on his dad's Hollywood ego, great.
Yeah. It's going to be really, really special. So I'm looking forward to it. It's happening tonight, of course, 8 p.m. Eastern in just a little bit on TBS Live. And then, of course, I think it might be live on the West Coast. I'm not sure, but hopefully it is. So you guys can check it out in just a little bit. So a lot of questions have come up about the potential of a female blood and guts match. Chuck, would you like to tell us what Tony Khan had to say about that?
The short version, because boy, Tony, I know someone who's long-winded. Tony's long-winded. I'm long-winded. So long-winded brothers. Basically, what Tony is saying at this point is there could be a blood and guts match with the women's roster in the future, but not right now because the roster is banged up. That was the short version of what he said. I think we're going to see it eventually. We got to see it. I mean, if you think of one of the most brutal matches in AEW history was the lights out match between Britt Baker and Thunder Rosa. So we all know, and then you have the images like Ty Conti when she had just with the crimson, like it should be no secret that the women in AEW can absolutely throw down. So a blood and guts match is going to happen in the future. But you know what? But I will say, for that match happen within the women's division, there has to be a lot of interweaving of storylines. We don't see a lot of that sometimes within the women's division. There's not a lot of multiple talents crossing over each other. So for storyline reasons, they got to make it make sense. But do I want to see it? Hell yeah, absolutely. I want to see it. We'll just have to see. We'll definitely have to see. But I think without question, we've seen obviously the chit chat back and forth and all access, like Thunder Rosa and Britt Baker's got to be in the middle of that match somehow. Like I think there's got to be some legit heat in that match, but we're going to see it. I just don't know when, but we'll see it.
For sure.
Yeah, I think the potential to build it now is going to be pretty huge, because you have the Outcasts, and it's very interesting you mentioned the interweaving sparks. That's what I look at, is like, how do you round out the five with both sides? Of course, you have Jamie Britt dealing with their feud with the Outcast. I mean, do you want to put all your star power in this match? Is the first thing that comes to mind. Do you want to throw a Jade in this match? And how do you get there storyline wise to make it work, when it seems like the focus has really just been about this blood rivalry between Saraya and Britt Baker for a majority of it? And Tony and Jamie get thrown in that. They have to work it out. I think they have enough time now that people are somewhat demanding it. They're clamoring for it. So it kind of lets the wheel spin for Tony, and now he can start trying to build it the right way, hopefully before the end of the year.
So I think there are some definite possibilities, lots of conversations, talking about he is indeed waiting on Jamie Hayter, and certainly Blood and Guts will be at least an hour. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to go for a while. The injury screwed up plans, no doubt about it. Shadow Ranger says you can do 4 versus 4 Outcasts and an extra versus a team of faces. It'll be interesting to see what happens with that, and you could get away with an 8-woman tag inside Blood and Guts. So very interesting. I'm not sure at what point we will get that, but perhaps maybe even later this year. Stranger things have happened. I mean, my goodness, they've got Winter is Coming immediately flashes in my head for that. That'd be a great thing to be on Winter is Coming. So we will certainly see about that. Also, interestingly enough, since we're talking about AEW, We've talked about ratings for NXT. The ratings are in for Collision and Battle for the Belt. Said, would you like to talk about who's watching and who isn't?
I can't get it in front of me. My screen went black.
Well, I mean, I can knock it out if you want me to, unless you or Chuck, if you've got it, you can go for it.
Let's see. Is my wireless? Yep, it's working. Okay.
All right. Very good.
Let's see. Collision. So it was a 3-hour extravaganza, may I add, and it was a good 3 hours, I might say, especially with Collision. Average 579,000 viewership, did a 0.20 rating in a demographic, the almighty demographic of 18 to 49. You know, I know there's been a lot of conversation about the numbers for Collision. You know, first of all, let's just talk about the quality of the show. I don't know if it's just me, but I feel like there's a different feel with Collision than with Dynamite.
It does feel different. It feels different.
From the commentary team, the presentation, the in-ring. I mean, God, the match between FTR. Oh my,
good Lord. Good Lord.
That was between FTR and Bullet Club Gold. What a banger. Like that was a pay-per-view worthy match on cable TV. And you know, there's been consistently great matches on Collision. So, you know, it's an old tradition to have wrestling on Saturdays. I know it, you know, obviously it's not in the days of used to have it once a week, and now we got 10 wrestling shows in 1 week. So there's always the argument of is it too much? I think it'll find its audience. I'm watching. I think they had to make it different.
Yeah.
If Collision was another carbon copy of Dynamite or even Rampage, those numbers wouldn't be good. But I think they're going to find a solid fan base. I think they're going to keep building that. They have a different kind of feel in terms of their creative, you know. So I think it'll be fine. I mean, it's our job sometimes to analyze the numbers so much. We got to step away from the numbers and go, is the product good or not?
Right.
And I think the product has been great so far. It's been great. And there's only one beef about Collision I had on Saturday. I just wish that Ricky Starks would have went over cleaner. That was my only. There was Punk.
Should we have a Ricky Starks conversation right now? Because
Punk didn't need the W, so we kind of knew Ricky was going to get it because he needed it. I understand I mean, you think about the way he won it was kind of old school Owen Hart, hold the rope, you know, roll out the ring. So I get the nod there. I just think for his character building, he could have beaten with a sunset flip and just held him down for the 3 count. We've seen that small package kind of situation before. Someone gets caught off guard before. It's the 1, 2, 3 kid and Razor Ramon all over again. I just wish it was a cleaner win for Ricky. That's the only thing I wish. The match was solid, but I wish it was a cleaner win for Ricky. But that's just me.
Said,
what do you think? Because I've got an opinion on this. But go ahead.
I actually watched Collision this past weekend. I thought it was a good show. As far as Ricky, I do agree. That felt like it was a very forced moment, just because I feel like maybe Khan got into like the booking side of things. Like, wait, what do we do with Ricky? And it's like, let's give him this edge that's like he doesn't need that. Like this one of your, some people will call him a pillar. So it's like I get that CM Punk is the cash cow, if you would, the eyes. Like you didn't need to do that. And then it seems like the follow-up is like he's going to lean back into more the prick style Ricky with the way he snatched the cup from Thunder Jushin Liger. It's like, well, what are we really doing here? What are we saying? Because we don't need to dip into that just to elevate CM Punk. CM Punk doesn't need to be elevated. He's a fixed person. Like he's a fixed character. But Ricky, if you wanted to paint him as one of your big stars, like you totally missed the boat with just that slight holding of the rope.
Yeah.
You know, I found I didn't find the holding of the rope to be as egregious as I found the snatching of the trophy.
Yeah.
That seemed to be the more egregious move. And in my mind, what it said was, you know, because remember when CM Punk first came back on that first episode of Collision, he really did give those I'm going heel vibes. And because he was in Chicago, naturally they're going to cheer him. I think AEW is really not prepared for a heel CM Punk. And so I think that this match was a way to, okay, let's not have a heel CM Punk. Let's turn Ricky back. And this way people will cheer for CM Punk. Just my thought on that, which is interesting. Now, there's a point that Nikki wanted to make here about talk about the disappearing of the Taya and Tony match. So let me clarify that a little bit, because so in the interest of full disclosure, I watched Collision on demand this past week because I was traveling and whatnot. And so I had heard on Monday somebody mention about the satellite going out. On demand, the whole show played as normal. There was no satellite out. So apparently the satellite being out was a real thing there, but they recorded the whole thing. So if you go back and watch this on demand, you'll see the entire match between Taya and Tony. It was a real match. It really happened. There was a full length to it. Taya got the win, or excuse me, Tony got the win. You can go back and watch the full thing if you go back and watch it on demand. The whole thing's there. There's absolutely no interruption at all. So that was just kind of an issue of live TV versus when it's being recorded, things being fixed in post. And that's exactly what happened. So if you get a chance to go back and watch it on demand, whether that is on your cable provider, on Hulu, however, you will see that the full match between Taya and Tony is there uninterrupted. So that's there. And in fact, you wouldn't even know that there was a satellite issue, save the commentary team talking about it if you watched it on demand. So that's pretty interesting. But I'm glad you guys brought that up. That's a mystery. There's more than meets the eye. Nah, there isn't. Sorry, no conspiracy there. You can go and watch the whole match on demand and you'll see exactly how it went down. Nothing funny. There was actually real live weather issues there in Canada that were going on. All right, so then I think we've got time for one more story, and I think that's going to be around preparation for WrestleMania. I know we started mentioning WrestleMania 40 and its packages. Anybody want to grab that before we get out of here? Everybody all at once. Okay.
I had to, this. No, I say, oh wow, because I re-looked at the story, and I'm like, why is WWE copyrighting an old WCW, and of all the WCW pay-per-views, uncensored? Why uncensored? You have more known pay-per-views in the WCW library, but why uncensored? That's very, I don't know. I mean, I don't, that surprised me, because that's why I went, oh wow, because I re-looked at that story. Really?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I thought they had already owned it. I mean, they already own the Great American Bash. They own Starrcade, I'm assuming, right?
Yes, they do.
They've used Starrcade at house shows, right? At
house shows, correct. Which I just think is like, really, what a way to stick it to Starrcade.
Yeah.
Like,
so they have, and have they used Clash of Champions?
They have
no, they have used Clash
of Champions.
It's this Night of Champions, but it's not Clash of Champions.
Right.
So there are other prime WCW names that you can use. Why uncensored?
That's
I want to see Thunder more than uncensored.
Considering uncensored was really kind of a take on ECW, and Extreme Rules is their take on ECW these days. Right. That's kind of weird. Go figure.
And I think a part of these travel packages, there's going to be an ECW experience with WrestleMania next year, so that might all tie in together.
Really?
Oh, now that might be interesting. I mean, in Philly, that kind of makes sense. That definitely makes sense.
Would it be?
I think that's why they would use uncensored then, because I think when you buy these priority passes, some of them will include ECW experience. I'm not sure if I read that Rob Van Dam is a part of that, but
he is.
I gotta know, people out there who buy these priority pass experiences, how? I just want to know how. Because some of these points.
Well, let me explain. First and foremost, they've been doing these packages for a while. And, you know, in WrestleMania's gone by, they had not nearly been as expensive as they are now. And so it's clearly the super dedicated fans who are doing this. And here's the tough part: if they can get the money for it, who's going to stop them, right? So, and there are clearly fans that are doing it, because those ringside seats and the like are definitely taken. So it's certainly a thing. Now, what I will say is advantageous to those who purchase the package is, it's, when I say all inclusive, I mean it cares for your hotel, it cares for tickets, it cares for all of these other ancillary things. All you ultimately have to do is get there and arrange your own travel, which you could Uber or do what have you. So that's an interesting thing. And for those who like that type of thing, God bless you.
Look,
Get
man, for $9K, I better be able to elbow drop the Miz like Snoop in the middle of the ring, okay? For $9,000.
$9K is a pretty penny. I mean, that's a car in some places. So
that is a whole
car.
used car right there.
It's a used car versus.
But you know what would be dope? What if they ran a small NXT show out of the old ECW arena?
The 2300 arena wouldn't surprise me at all. I honestly think they're going to find a way to incorporate the 2300 arena in this. I mean, it just makes sense. So, yeah.
Give me a piggyback ride to my seat.
Wait. Something just for you said. Are you ready for this? Just for you. JD just got here. Said JD, you will be proud to know there have been no miscellaneous sounds on the show today.
Yo, we went the whole hour without this.
The whole hour. He kicked off the show telling us his great adulting accomplishment. So we are very, very proud of there it is. Just there it is.
Cedric must pose.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we're about to get out of here. DJ Chuck, let the people know how they can get in contact with you, sir.
You can find me on Instagram at the Old Soul HFP. Check out my group Honor Flow Productions. Our album's called The Black Odyssey, with a couple pretty dope wrestling references within some of those lyrics. Check out our music videos on our YouTube channel and all that good stuff as well, including our documentary of our tour in Japan.
Very nice. Said, how can they reach you, sir?
You can find me on the Bird app. That says CEDD_SAYS. And I'll be threading. Find my threads at Said Is The Answer, or same thing on Instagram, Said Is The Answer. You can check out my journalism work on HCTV, Hawthorne Community Television. That's on YouTube. Also, check me out on Daily DDT. I write wrestling articles as well as combat sport articles. Energizer, Duracell, holler at your boy. Let me not forget that. Give me that sponsorship.
Yes. Full sponsorship in tow. Of course, you can find me at Bonafide across all of the socials. You can check out commentary work with Southern Honor Wrestling as part of IWTV, commentary work with Battle Slam as part of Fight TV, and you can check out my work with the Nightmare Factory on their YouTube page. Of course, you can check me out here Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and across a lot of other spaces in terms of podcast land. Make sure you are following us here at Women's Wrestling Talk at WW Talk Pod across all the socials. All sorts of great things are happening there. Great articles on our website, www.talkpod.com. Make sure you're checking that out. Got to shout out everybody in the chat, Boza and JD and Nikki and Ron and all of the people. The Shadow Ranger was in the building, and I feel like I'm missing people because there were more folks here. But yeah, lots of great commentary with you guys. Eddie James was in the building, and Paul Launch, I think that's how we say that. So shout out to all of you joining us. Steph, I saw you there. Stephen Stansel, I also saw you there as well. So we definitely appreciate you guys rocking with us. We always have tons of shows to check out here. We'll make sure that you are aware of them. But in terms of WWT, until Friday, we will see you. This has been WWT Live as part of Women's Wrestling Talk, the #1 women's wrestling show on the planet.
Hey peeps, TK Trinidad here, boss lady of Women's Wrestling Talk. And I want to say thank you so much for watching, because you've got millions of options. Plus, you don't have to worry about sharing your password to check us out. But while you're here, hopefully you know we have so many more shows to watch, like Turnbuckle Glam, Raw Post Show, WOW post-show, AEW Dynamite post-show, Women's Wrestling Army post-show, NXT post-show, Impact Wrestling post-show, AEW Rampage and SmackDown Live post-show, On the Scroll, ROH post-show, WWT Live, plus all of our interviews with the hottest women's wrestlers in the game. Make sure that you like, comment, and subscribe. Check out our website at www.talkpod.com and follow us on all social media platforms at www.talkpod, and make sure to spread the word. That means send this to the group chat. Yes, even the person with the green bubble. Thanks again so much for watching Women's Wrestling Talk, the #1 women's wrestling show on the planet. Ciao for now.
Women's Wrestling Talk, the #1 women's wrestling show on the planet.